Just cover a brief about business analysts and probably talk about introduction to business analysts. I see we have right. So business analyst, since we're talking about business analysts and right, anybody. So is basically to achieve a result, right? So a project. So when I say that, and I'll keep going back to the example of people attending this training as well. So you can say that is a project for your own self, either for a learning or for a certification or from the career perspective. You took on a project for yourself, going to mind that there's something you want to enhance as a career. So you would have done some analysis online to look for some courses, then would have read some reviews, and then would have decided that yes, you want to go with this sort of a training program. So it's basically an activity, or as Matt mentioned, what you do to do a sort of an enhancement to a particular system, or anything which you'll do to achieve a desired result, right? The important thing about project is that it's always temporary. Project cannot be a permanent thing. For example, if I go back to the same training example, this training will get over in some time. It will not run for the entire lifetime, or it will not run for a year or 2 years, or 5 years and above. So a project is always a temporary in nature. It is to achieve a particular set of goals or objective, and once those goals and objectives are achieved, the project cease to exist. Okay. So if you look at its temporary nature, and it indicates a definite beginning and the end. We will talk about what are the other areas. So initiation is the time when we start a project. So that is how why would you start a project? How would you start a project? What the project would do? That will come in the initiation phase. Generally, a project, and we will come and talk in detail about this when we talk about business analysts as well. Uh, for anything to start, you need one of the two things. You need either an area of opportunity, as Matt mentioned, that you want to compete with your, or you bring in better products with as per your competitors, or you need a problem statement. So you need either of these things. So either there has to be something wrong with the existing system, or you want to, there's an area of opportunity that you want to enhance the existing system. Then only a project can be initiated. Okay, because these two things will give you the real need, why we need to do and what we need to achieve. Okay, so that will be covered in the initiation section. From the initiation section, we go to the planning and design, which is how would you go about a project? How would you design the whole thing? So, if you take the training example, your planning and design would be when you did some analysis on the training components, or you will go and Google the different training programs available currently online or classroom. What suits you best given your kind of work? You want a part-time course, or you want a full-time classroom course? So you would have different guidelines for yourself which you would want to go through. So that would be complete come in planning. How would you go about planning this BA course? So same way in a project, how would you go about completing a particular project? What activities, and how would you perform those activities? Once you have planned and designed the whole project, you will go into the execution phase, that is actually doing it, and you monitor and control that to see during the execution that uh, if you see this whole triangle of planning and design, execution and monitoring and control, this keep feeding back to each other to make sure that the execution is as per the plan and design, right? So it's not that when you decided that you will do a BA course, let's say in May 2016, as a plan, then you start in November, 2016, or November 2017. So you started the execution phase, but it's not that first class happened in May and then the next class is happening in October. So you need to keep a constant check on the execution to make sure that it is as per the plan and design what you started with, what you thought of. And once it is complete, the execution is complete, the project moves to the closing phase. Okay, closing phase is basically at the end that you finally sign off and check that yes, everything has been done as per the need, as per the requirement, as per the plan and design which were decided. And yes, and the critical part is that yes, it meets the reasons of starting the project, right? So either it was a problem statement. If it was a problem statement, then yes, that problem has been fixed, and it was if the area of opportunity, that additional capability or enhancement has been implemented in the particular system or a particular process. Right? Any questions on the slide about what is project? Pretty straightforward, right? Right. So reasons for project initiation, as we discussed, you might find a lot of things in the slide like cater to market demand, tackle competition, increase market share, comply with the regulation. But if I have to put under anything under a higher head, either it will be problem statement or area of opportunity. Okay, that's how. Just give me 1 second. One more thing, guys. If you have any questions, you can always ping me on the chat as well. So if I'm, in case you want to just quickly ask a question on any of the slides. Right? So we're talking about the initiation reasons for initiation. So any detailed reason you can actually club under the main head, which is either the area of opportunity or a problem statement. These are the only two reasons why and when we will do a project. So all projects are aimed to help the project sponsor in one way or the other to reduce cost, increase revenue, or increase efficiency to ensure transparency at risk, etc. Again, depending upon the need of the project, if it's area of opportunity, so it could be to reduce cost, to increase revenue. Again, it talks about detail, but overall the head still remains the same. The either area of opportunity you need, or you need a problem statement to initiate a project. Okay. Who's the project sponsor? Anybody? Whom? What do we understand when we say project sponsor?
Someone who could approve financial backing for.
Sorry.
Someone who could approve financial backing for the project.
Yes. So is a person who actually pays for the project, right? So the person who signs on that check which says that X amount of money allocated for this project. So that guy is the project sponsor. Very, very, very important for a business analyst to know who is the sponsor, right? Uh, if you join an organization which is already running a project, you are entitled to know critical business people. You can always ask your project manager to ask few critical stakeholders. They could be either from the business side, they could be subject matter experts, they could be key contacts from the development team, testing team, implementation team, or whoever you have as a stakeholder in your project, because every specific project might have different stakeholders. Uh, Organizations also do a documentation which is known as TOR, which is called Terms of Reference or Statement of Work. Different names, different templates. But what it holds is these critical key business contacts and business stakeholders from the departments which are involved in the project, right? So you're entitled for those documents. In case you don't have it, please don't shy away from asking that document from your project manager. Your project manager will definitely have that document. A list of critical stakeholders with the contact details with the person. And in that list, there would be a project sponsor as well. And it's a very important person because this is the person who signs on that amount or allocates that amount which is being spent on that project. Okay, and we'll talk about managing stakeholders and escalation metrics. Project sponsor is the, you can say, in a sense you can say god of the project, because in case you run into any very serious problem and you don't know where to go, a project sponsor at the end of the day would decide and would take a call. Okay. So the other department which you would have seen in organizations is the operations department. When we look at the operations and project, there's a list of differences. Anybody wants to an operations team performs the day-to-day activity which is required by the organization to survive or to run what they do every day, right? And projects team is basically, as I said, is a team which will initiate certain projects, which would be out of either area of opportunity and a problem statement. Uh, if you look at the business analyst role, you will find, if you look at in the scheme of things, in the way teams have been structured, especially if you see at captive banks or organizations which are operations side of it, they have a team, operations team, and it will be operations team who will be coming up with the need, right? They would come up with the, either they can say, pain areas or pain points in an existing operation system. It could be a process which is causing them, hurting them in a certain way. It could be a particular system within their process which is not very effective. But it will ideally be operations team which will come up with the reasons for a project, and the projects team would be responsible for implementing it. And that's where a business analyst role comes into play. Business analyst guy is somewhere sitting in between, who would speak to the operations team or to get the requirements as to what exactly they need, what exactly needs to be done, what is the pain area, what is the area of opportunity they need to work, and then take that and do his thing. And we'll talk about what his BA thing is, do his thing, and then get it implemented. So if it's an IT project, it will go into the development, testing, and SDLC phase. If it's a manufacturing process, then probably it will go into the manufacturing line and get created. So based on the industry, again, BA would be responsible to document and get more details as to what is required to be done. Okay. Anybody wants to add anything? All right. So as as mentioned, unlike operations which are endless, projects are temporary endeavors, which we covered actually in the first slide. So a project has to have an end date. Project cannot have. There's no project which doesn't have an end date. So all projects will have an end date for sure. Okay. Um, the role of a project manager. Project manager will become as you say. So if we are doing a project, we need somebody to take accountability and responsibility of the overall project. So project manager basically takes up that role, takes up that responsibility. uh, a project manager is basically accountable, and we'll talk about accountability and responsibility and what's the difference between those things in detail when we're talking about uh, in a particular section on the requirements section from the BA space. But just for right now, there can only be one accountable person for a particular role, and project manager is accountable for the overall delivery of the project. So in case project is not delivered or gets delayed, or if there's any problem with the project, is the responsibility lies with the project manager, or you can say at times the blame will also go to the project manager if something goes wrong. So project manager as such, if you see, and we'll not talk too much in detail about project manager because this training program is on a BA space. The only reason we're covering it because there will be certain activities and certain things you will see that will overlap with project manager and business analyst. A business analyst will work very, very, very closely with the project manager, to so much so you find business analysts being right hands to project managers, because a project manager's responsibility is to manage the end-to-end project, but they don't do any specific activities, and which is fair enough because given the kind number of activities and number of departments, divisions which are involved, project manager responsibility is to make sure that everything is being done at the right time, on as per plan and within budget, and not perform those activities. And BA, and the importance of BA is because if the requirements are wrong, or if the requirements are not clear, concise, complete, it could delay the project. So that's the reason I'm saying that you'll see project managers and BA working very, 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 very closely together. In certain organizations, business analysts work with senior business analysts and project managers, right? So if you join an organization as a junior business analyst, it could be that you might report into another business analyst, or you might work in a team of business analysts. But in a bigger scheme of things, if you see, you will still be working with the project manager. Okay, so what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, what is the project's ideology, what is the project direction, what is the way project is going to run, and everything is going to come from the project manager. Also, project manager is the main contact between the customer and the management. So, project manager will also be one of the key contacts as business analyst between the operations team and, in fact, all the stakeholders team. And that's the reason I said that as soon as I join a project, this is a personal suggestion. When you join a project as a business analyst, first thing you should ask for is your critical or your stakeholder list, which will or your terms of reference or your statement of work, because these document which will be created by a project manager will detail everything from what the project is all about, what it is you're going to do, who all will be involved, and what will be the responsibility of different people. So something which is very very important and is basically created by the project manager. Any questions? All right.
I can hear you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
But I was saying I can hear you. I have no question.
Okay, all right. All right, come to the important part. What is business analyst? I think we talked enough. I'm not say enough. We have talked somewhat about what business analyst is and who is a business analyst. In a nutshell, it's basically set of tasks, knowledge and the techniques which you do to perform a certain set of activities. Uh, if you think from the business analyst perspective, so earlier there was no clarity on the kind of activities which a BA performs, and hence there was a lot of confusion as to what a BA role is, what a BA should do, and what a BA should not do. Um, Honestly, if you ask me, personally speaking, the kind of I've worked with various organizations across globe. Uh, the confusion is still there, and there are certain organizations who have realized the importance of BA role, as I mentioned earlier, but you will still find that confusion being there, where with people be asking BA plus a lot of additional activities or a lot of additional knowledge. I still see a lot of BA doing double role. So I still know handful of BAs who are actually developers who write piece of code, and then when need on as in need basis they perform a BA role as well. Now it might work for small scale projects where your requirements are handful of requirements from a couple of stakeholders at the max, so you can just quickly talk to two people, get the requirements, and start working on a code for whatever they need. So for a small scale project, for a simple project, it's might still work, but from my personal perspective, from medium to highly complex projects, this is not something which we can do. You would need a specialized business analyst to perform the business analysis, as we say. And we'll talk in detail about what all business analyst role entails, and what all is required from a BA perspective. So we'll talk in detail when it says, the BA also determines the solutions to business problems. Uh, it's not only so when we talk about, and we'll talk in detail about, when I said that for a project to start you need area of opportunity or you need a problem statement. So whenever you have that, the solution could be either a system, it could be a process solution, it could be a people solution. It could be just that a business analyst job is to understand why we're doing it and what is the best possible solution. We'll cover that in detail. So that's the reason I'm not covering this solution of food, because solution could be anything. A general mindset, especially if you have worked in IT, general mindset becomes that the solution to every problem is a system. It's not entirely true. It could be just in getting an existing application upgraded, or just buying new systems, or hiring new people, or just changing the existing business process as well. So whatever the solution, best fit solution is for the problem, that again would be suggested by a business analyst, and we will cover that in detail when we talk about business case and option analysis. Any questions so far? So some core key role of business analyst. A business analyst works as a liaison among stakeholders, right? Um, to elicit, analyze, communicate, and validate requirements. It's not entirely true. As a business analyst, you will do these activities plus whatever is required for the project. The way I see it and the way I tell people, a business analyst, you cannot just tie a business analyst by saying that you can only elicit requirements and analyze requirements and communicate and validate the requirements. It is any activity which is required for the success of the project, right? For the interest of the project goal or the objectives which has been set by the project, it becomes a sort of comes under the gamut of business analyst, right? Primarily, it is managing the stakeholders, and that's the reason I said that it seems like on the surface it seems like an easy role, but it's not, because when you are communicating and contacting and working with your stakeholders, every person is a different person, and since I said that projects are temporary, so you can understand that once the project ends and the next one starts, your stakeholders will completely change. So with every new project, you get new stakeholders, you get new challenges, you get new things to work on. So it's interesting from that perspective, but yes, it is challenging as well. Along with that, business analyst understands business problems and opportunities in the context of requirements and recommends solutions that enable the organization to achieve its goals. Now, when we talk about BA role, a lot of people, the first thing which comes into mind, as I said, that people think requirements, people think documentation, people think on talking to stakeholders. That is a majority part of it, yes, but there is also another part of BA which which is uh, understanding the problem and coming up with the optional options or solutions, possible solutions for that problem. Something which we do in a business case, that is also comes under the roles and responsibility of a business analyst. Would everybody or every BA do that? Probably no, but yes, from a senior business analyst and above role, that becomes a regular affair. Before a project is initiated or started, a sponsor might ask business analysts to do whole option analysis and come up with possible options and solutions, and to recommend whether a project is viable or not as well. So that is also a part of a BA role. Not that everybody will be doing it at a higher level, but at times you will see people performing that role as well or supporting in that role. So it could be, as I said, that if you join in as a junior business analyst and you're working in a BA pool or a BA team, your senior business analyst or lead business analyst might be doing this role and might ask you to suggest or assist in creation of a business case. A business analyst is responsible for ensuring the project's output meets the requirements of the business and that they are fit for purpose. Uh, this is one of the primary reasons why you would see business analysts being aligned with the UAT as well. UAT, as the name suggests, and Matt has been part of it, so you know you can add more to it. UAT is basically user acceptance testing. So that is the time when you check whether the solution which has been created meets the actual requirements or meets the user requirements, and it is tested by the users, right? But you will find a business analyst also involved in UAT because at the end of the day, uh, for two reasons. That is because once at the end of the day, a BA is responsible that all the requirements have been completely or fulfilled and they are fit for purpose. And the second reason is because since from the day one or from the requirement gathering session, a BA has been involved with the stakeholder. BA could actually talk to the stakeholder at a better level and explain how particular requirements have been implemented for the users. Right?
I'd agree with that. Also, the other thing I would add, you listed on there that business analysts need to meet the requirements of the business, but also that it meets what the programmers designed. And although I focused on UAT, SALT sometimes addresses that the design doesn't meet what the programmers actually put into or put their efforts into. So I'd say on both. Although that tends to focus on business release analyst, but I would definitely agree.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised. Matt has is a seasoned person, so he has a quite good amount of years of experience. But for others who have not, but just to you'll be surprised to see how many projects have failed because of that. And um, just to give you a small example, how what's the importance of business, and this is coming from my own personal experience. This is when I just started off as a business analyst. Uh, I was writing a requirements document, and it was basically that the requirement was in case somebody puts a pass date as a user on the application. I think it was in a banking application. If somebody puts a pass date, the system should throw an error message that the pass date is not allowed in that field. So when I was writing the requirements documentation, I had discussion with my stakeholder, but I didn't get the actual error message they want to display during my discussion. So I thought that I'll put that message later on. For the time being, on the document, I just had it that a system would throw an error message. Imagine what the developer would have done. When I looked at the app, and I've totally forgot about it, which was my mistake, yes. But when I looked at the system and I looked at the requirement, the pop-up message said, "System will throw an error message." So the developer didn't bother coming back and asking what message you want to show. And that's the reason when my senior business analyst told me that if your sentence can be interpreted in two ways, it's a wrong sentence. So as a business analyst, we need to be very, very, very careful as to how we write it, what we write. And it becomes, as Matt was saying, a business analyst responsibilities, sometimes the design team and the build team, what is designed, the developer does not code that way. So as a BA, it becomes a responsibility that not only the requirements are being built and implemented, they are also fit for purpose and fit for use as well, with the intention of the creation. It should meet the intent also of that requirement. It's not for the sake of just implementing a requirement that we do. Right, Matt?
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah. All right. So, what you see on the screens is the knowledge areas from IIBA perspective. So for the interest of everybody, IIBA is an international institute of business analyst body. It's a non-profit organization, something similar to PMI, which is project manager. And what IIBA has been trying to do over the years is to basically standardize what a business analyst does and does not do. And they have been quite successful to a level where people have started realizing and started agreeing to what IIBA says. They have this BABOK, or Business Analyst Body of Knowledge book. Version 3.0 is currently out, which has been launched very recently. What I would suggest, 2.0 is easily available now. If you want to start, you can start from 2.0. Version 3.0 actually builds on 2.0, so it's not that drastically a lot of things have changed. Uh, that is one book I would suggest. It's not an easy book to read and follow through, but if you're really serious and you're interested, and if you have time, I would suggest that go through it. What Babok has done is that they have divided in all or any activity which a BA would perform into six knowledge areas, right? So the six knowledge areas are elicitation, business analyst planning and monitoring, enterprise analysis, solution assessment and validation, requirements analysis, and requirements management and communication. So any activity which a BA performs would actually be part of the six knowledge areas. And the last box which you see at the bottom is the underlying competencies, which is basically what you need, different tasks, techniques, tools which you need to perform or complete those activities within this knowledge area. Right? We will not be covering the BABOK as such in this training program, but yes, um, we will correlate with Babel, right? So, anyways, BA activities are BA activities, right? So either you follow Babok or you follow general BA guidelines, the activity still remains the same. But I will keep relating back to Babok. It's quite a. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it, but a lot of organizations have started taking the IIB very seriously, and they do follow. In fact, you would find that the number of jobs which have started asking for the certification has increased drastically now. What I've seen last couple of years. So I couldn't see the name now. At least they moved to an area where they say the certification will be preferred. And in some organizations, I've seen that the CBAP certification is mandatory for certain roles if you want to join. And this is, as I said, the CBAP needs 5 years of experience. So it is for mid senior to senior roles that organizations are asking for certification. Okay.
Just to add that to that as well,
Yeah.
from what I've read, the
Yes.
certifications won't change from 2.0 to 3.0 until maybe around September. So to just reinforce what Veneet had already said, if you're going to focus on one, it seems as though the most recent 3.0 may not be beneficial if you plan on testing before September.
Yeah, and given it's May, I don't think so. If you start the application now, you'll be able to give your exam by September. The whole application process. One of the reasons why you find a lot of people not going for the examination or testing themselves on the CBAP course is the application process is quite cumbersome. It's a lengthy process. You have to document your experience. You have to do a training. You have to document that as well. You have to get references. So it's not a simple and straightforward process. Plus, you have to read that book, which is it's a big book. I want to say big book, but yes, it's a big, complicated, little complicated, and it talks a lot about BA requirements, and it becomes confusing at times. But you have to keep focus. So I know a lot of people who are going for the certification examination, and I think they have come up with a rule that if you register yourself up to a certain point of time, then probably you can still test yourself on 2.0 till end of this year. It's still under discussion, what I believe from IIBA, but I think post September you cannot register for examination on 2.0. You will have to register yourself for the examination on 3.0, as Matt mentioned that it will start from September, but if you register before September, I think you can still give your exam till end of this year. If in case anybody is interested in going for that certification as well. Okay. So YouTube videos for some of the business analyst things that you talked about. So again, you can go through all these on your leisure time. I'm sure there would have been more videos um, than what is mentioned in the slide. Okay. So, relationship between project manager and business analyst. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. So, I think we've covered this at a high level in a nutshell. What is a project manager? What is a business analyst? And the relationship between the two. Unless anybody has a question, I don't want to go spend too much time on this. Is anybody who's not clear between the project manager and business analyst?
I'm good here.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So just a high level, a project manager is responsible and accountable primarily for the project which is currently being held. So anything which goes wrong with the project, accountability lies with the project manager. Business analyst is or will become project manager's right hand man for the overall project, because a BA actually plays such a key role that if BA team goes wrong or if a BA goes wrong, you can imagine it will be a domino effect on the overall project, right? And that is one of the reasons why BA role started. People started taking BA role as a serious thing, because if your requirements are wrong, your design will be wrong, your development will be wrong, your testing will be wrong, and then when you reach UAT stage, the user would say that you got my requirements wrong, and this is not what I need, right? And this is which is what has happened with the major projects. I have seen a project being scrapped after 5 months of development, 5 months of design, development, testing activity going to zero, sunk cost, absolute zero. No output could be used by anybody in the user because the requirements were understood incorrectly and they were developed. The requirements were not clear from the BA space, right? So that's the kind of domino effect it has, and that's the reason why a project manager will keep the BA is very close to himself or herself, as the importance of requirements is utmost in a project to make sure that it's a successful project. Okay. All right. Again, what we discuss, role of a PM and role of a BA. So when you see your knowledge areas between a BA and a PM, PM knowledge areas is coming from a PMI body, which is Project Management Institute. BA knowledge area is coming from IIBA. I'm not going to spend too much time because this training is about business analyst. We'll cover the knowledge areas and the activities of a BA. So we're good there. From the PM perspective, if you look at yeah, the key areas is the integration, scope management, time management, cost management, human resource communication. So basically managing anything and everything which is related to the delivery of the project, right? Uh, there are certain areas you will find a PM working very closely, as I said. So scope management is a most important part, and we'll talk about when we talk about requirements. We'll talk about scope and scope creep, what it means in detail. But scope management is a critical factor for both BA and project manager, right? From project manager perspective, because if the scope of a project, when you decide and freeze the scope, if it increases, that will mean either increase in cost or delay in timelines, right? It will also mean additional work for business analysts, right? So when we talk about scope, it is very important that BA and project manager are at sync as to what is the clear scope of the project. Time management, PM looks at the overall time management of project. Time management from a BA perspective is the time management of the BA activities and role which it needs to perform. So when I talk about the common documentation, um, what's the amount of time which you BA would need to complete the documentation, and how quickly you can turn around the requirements into a BRD or FSD or whatever template you guys are using, right? So you will find some areas, and as and when we talk about BA space, I will mention where involvement of project manager would be there within the BA space, and where project manager will work closely with the BA in those activities. Okay, skill set comparison. Uh, This could be comparison between anybody. So both PM and BA need strong communication skills, understanding of SDLC if you are working in an IT industry, or else whatever industry you're working in, the development or the manufacturing process, if for that matter, the understanding of manufacturing process, not mandatory, but helps a lot in understanding and performing your activities. Negotiation, consensus building. This is basically managing your stakeholders. Influencing skill is one of the very, very important skill as a BA or a project manager you need to perform your role. And then strong interpersonal and client management skills. Again, so these are behavioral aspects or behavioral traits of a business analyst. Uh, Most of them you will see that you need these skills from any role these days. Negotiating with your boss is also a skill which you need. So you use these sort of skills in any role you perform, not only business analyst. I'm not gonna go through the differences. This is something you can do as a self study if anybody has a question, because I think this is getting too much into detail. A project manager looks at the bigger picture. We've already discussed all these in various discussions. So project manager looks at the overall project and responsible for the overall project, whereas business analyst will be performing the actual activities, right? Uh, Project manager directs the project team. Business analyst will be managing the SMEs. So go through self, study about the slides in the PDF. If you have any questions, you can always come back to me. It's very straightforward, simple comparison between PM and B. Okay, I don't know who said this, but the best way to guarantee success of any type of project is to have a strong, experienced project manager and a business analyst. Between PM and BA, you can actually know that if a project will be successful or a failure. And I've seen only two people handling the whole project in such a way, because the kind of power project manager and BA has, clubbed with the skill set, if you have the right skill and you perform the activities in the right way, you can actually govern and control the direction of the whole project. Okay, and hence that's the reason why PM and BAs you'll find is one of the critical roles these days for any company who's involved projects, and especially IT projects. Okay. Any questions?
Good here.
Okay. So you quickly go through SDLC. I see a lot of people are from IT experience, so um, I think Pooja is the only person who's not from IT, but we still covered SDLC. So basically, SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. It's how a framework has been defined to develop basically a life cycle of the software development process. You know what different phases will go through, who will perform what activity in a different phase. Um, it's basically we'll talk. We have an SDLC detail slide as well, which we'll cover in the next session. But just to give you an overview, what uh, phases it has and what kind of milestones it keeps, what kind of deliverables in every phase, and what is the role of business analysts in each and every phase. We'll quickly talk about that in this slide of SDLC. So the overall software development is divided into four sections, if you will. First is your defined project scope. Second is your specify features, baseline system, build the product and deliver product to the customer. These are the four high level sections if you see from the software development lifecycle perspective. We don't use exact words, but you will see most of this activity being performed. So we talked about project initiation, analysis and planning of a project. Then comes the requirement specification and design. You will find BA role being very, very, very strong in these four areas. Okay. Then comes the development, testing. Once the testing is complete, the product is delivered to the end user and support is provided. Right. So now we talked about BA role being very strong in this area. I will not. We'll talk in detail about the initiation analysis planning. This is the time when we do business case and everything, but that will come later on. But from a majority perspective, BA is responsible from the requirements gathering and analysis perspective. This is where basically BA is responsible for requirement gathering, documentation, validation, detailing of requirements in different aspects, be it modeling or in only in the text format. This is the majority of a role which a BA would perform. Okay. Um, you will see or you would have heard about terms from the BA perspective of function specification document, software specification document, user requirement. Um I generally refrain from using specific document names because over the years I've worked with different organizations. I've seen what organizations have done is that they've come up with their own unique name with different acronyms. Overall, I think the understanding of the fundamental is more important. What the document contains, what is the TOC, what is the table of contents of that document, what all areas you need to cover in that document. Again, this will be covered in detail when we talk about requirements management and requirements gathering in the BA space. But since we're talking in SDLC overall high level, when we talk about requirement specification, this is where BA performs this activity, where the requirements gathering happens, requirements detailing happen, and once the requirements are clearly validated, signed off by the business, it moves to the design team. Okay. So the role of BA in requirement analysis, everything has to be done by BA, right from gathering to understanding to documenting to modeling to getting it validated and prioritized. Any questions on requirement analysis? Again, I know it's very high level. Yeah, I know it's high level because all of this will be covered in detail when we talk about BA specific requirement. There's a whole presentation only on requirements, and then there's another presentation only on modeling requirements. So we'll cover this in detail. We're just covering role of BA in a SDLC phase. So once the requirement documentation is complete, it's signed off, it goes to the design phase. Design team is responsible to and basically create a design document which will like detail or explain how the requirements would be created or how it would be developed. What would be the design of the application or of the solution? Right? From the BA perspective, a business analyst will work closely with the design team because if the design is wrong, it might mean that the requirements might not be completely implemented. As we covered in the start or initial sections, that BA is responsible for making sure the requirements are delivered and are fit for purpose. So BA would be involved in the design team, but is not required or responsible for the design documents, right? But yes, since business analyst is closest to the stakeholder or the end user or to the requirements, a BA would work closely with the design team, resolve any questions, queries they may have. Also, make sure that the design is in line with how the requirements are needed to be implemented. Now, an important point here is that in some highly and medium complex projects, you might not be able to perform that activity because designs could actually, and especially technical designs for a complex project, could be very, very tricky to understand. So, very specific role again. So, in those cases, the expectation of a BA can only work to a level wherever a BA is comfortable. So you could only be there in the design team or helping and supporting design team with the questions and queries they may have on requirements. You might not be able to provide the input, but that is acceptable and understandable. Okay. Once
Vineet, I have a question.
yes.
Yeah, so here the design phase is technical design or the UI design team that we have in the project.
So it's basically the technical design. UI design is also covered in some. So it depends how your organization wants to cover it. Some organizations want to do a UI part later on because UI design is something which can quickly be changed and it's not a major piece of work, to be honest. Whereas uh, the design, what I'm talking about is how a design of an application will be done. So let's just say you're building a brand new application. What sort of a front layer you would keep, what sort of a middle layer you'll keep. So where would your logic be? Would it be a SOA architecture or will it be a three-tier architecture? How would your database perform? What sort of where are you keeping your database? What kind of a table structure you'll keep? So this is a key design elements are, this is what design team basically does. UI part is also covered, but depends again project to project. If that is being covered here, or sometimes organizations do UI during the development phase.
Okay, so what all design deliverables will be here in this phase?
It's
Is
basically
this a technical design
yes,
document?
yes, technical design document, which will tell you
And
about.
what about the
Yes, please go on.
yeah, and what about the UML diagrams, that is activity sequence? So will that also come under this design phase or?
No, that will come part of requirement analysis. So that is something which a BA will do. Okay, and we'll talk about those in detail. So that is when we talk about activity diagrams or when we talk about flow charts or BPMN, if you guys would have heard, business process modeling notation, all these are ways to model requirements, and it should be it's a BA role which a BA would perform based on what is the best modeling technique uh, for that requirement or for that project. You will create those diagrams and you'll add those diagrams in the requirement documentation, right? And we'll talk in detail why only text requirements are not good, because if I give you a 5 page document which just keeps talking about what I want to achieve, it'll be very, very, very confusing for the design team, for the developer to understand. They'll end up making mistakes in a requirement. So what we do is we club the requirements. We do have text requirements, but we also try to model those requirements in a diagram in a flowchart way, which is easier to understand and grasp for the development in the design. To answer your question,
Just
UI
to
can.
clarify for my,
Yes, please.
sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just saying that from the UI perspective, it's a choice for the organization because it depends if you have a separate UI development team. And given in today's world with user experience coming in, there might be if the project is specific to user experience side of it is being looked at, then you might have a UX designer working with a design team. In which case, they will work on the UI part as well. Sorry, Matt, you want to go?
I know it was more of a question, and I think this is kind of building off of Anshal's question. So during this program, are we going to focus more on user experience or user interface, or will we be delving into both
So when you say user experience or user
from the role of the business analyst?
So we will basically not cover any of that, Matt. What we will do or we will talk about and cover is from the business analyst perspective what a BA should do. And we're only covering the BA perspective, whether be it from the you know user experience perspective. We will talk about those certain aspects every now and then, but the whole program is primarily structured around BA's roles and responsibilities. Right? So I will talk
Okay.
about gathering of requirements, how to model requirements. We'll talk about class diagram. We'll talk about activity diagram, flow charts, swim lanes. We'll talk about elicitation techniques like interviews, questionnaires, surveys, workshops. So we'll talk about those aspects in detail. We'll talk about testing as well, SQL. We'll talk about other few areas which support BA as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh, any more questions? So once the design phase is complete, which basically the output is your technical design document, uh, the project flows to the development phase. This is where the actual coding happens, and based on the kind of project you would have, based on the kind of technology being used, this is where the actual code would be written. Again, when we talk about uh, involvement of a business analyst in development phase, BA is not required or expected to write the code, but yes, BA would be there to help the developers to understand what the requirements are all about, what is, if there are any queries on the requirement, and making sure that the document is complete and then everything. So going back to the example which I took, the developer was supposed should have come back to me as a question, what error message you want to display in case somebody enters a past date. So these sort of queries, and you feel that if your comment document is complete, why would you have any queries? Trust me, when you see people are working in development, the kind of questions they will come, and you know there will be a lot of questions coming from those, and they might be very minute or small questions, and you say that it's a very minor detail, but it's a BA's responsibility to answer those minor details as well, because those small minor details end up become bigger things when it goes to UAT. B is also asked to review prototypes. This is only to review. So we'll talk about prototyping and why we create prototypes. But if a prototype is created, a BA would review it because BA knows the requirement the best. And once the BA reviews it, then it goes to the client for sign off. Okay? But we'll talk about what is prototyping again, a whole section in the requirements gathering and management component. Right. Once the development is complete, you have the testing phase. Testing phase is basically where you will confirm that the requirements meet what the code has been written meets the requirement as was documented by the BA or as it was asked by the user. Again, it's a specialized team. BAs are now this is a gray area. You would see some people saying that a BA is required to do testing, whereas IIBA clearly states that a business analyst should not be testing the system, right? But we will see some roles expecting a BA to test. So it's sort of a gray area in the industry. My understanding is that a BA should not be testing the activity because from a project perspective, a business analyst has basically gathered the requirements and written the requirements, right? So if I only test my requirements, testing is basically testing those requirements and the code. If I only test the requirements, chances are that I might miss something, and if something feels like I'm marking my own paper. Whereas if I write the requirements, and let's say for example, Matt is testing as in a testing team, Matt has a different, it's a different fresh mind who has not been involved in the requirements. He does not take anything for granted and goes in detail of testing activity. Might be able to pick up some gaps which I would have missed during my requirement phase or requirement gathering phase. But if only I keep testing those requirements, that gap which was there during the requirement gathering will stay as a gap. Okay? That's the reason it is suggested that a testing team should be separate and should not be testing the requirements. But yes, There is a involvement of BA again from the perspective of suggesting and assisting the testing team as to what will the best way to test a particular requirement, if there are any queries or if there's any data, specific data. At times you will have special business cases which are complicated data requirements. In that case, BA could help the testing team understanding the data needs. Um, um, Also, once the defects are raised in testing, it will go through a business analyst to review to make sure that the defects are valid. So that is another activity which a BA can perform within the testing space. But doing the actual testing is something which most of the organization don't do, and IIB also does not suggest that. But I will be honest and say I've seen organizations where BA does testing also. So that's where we are at the moment. So um, release and maintenance. So once the testing is complete, the product is actually released to the end users, and then there's a maintenance phase which starts. From a BA perspective, BA is help in training the end users on to how to use the new system. At times, create training manuals as well. Most of the organizations I have seen, they have their own training department, so they create the content. Again, BA will work very closely with these guys. Simple reason, if you try and understand that a business analyst was the first person who listen to the requirements, or who was the first point of contact for any of the requirements which have been implemented in a project. So you can imagine that being so close to the requirements, BA becomes the first point of contact for any queries and any questions for any department phase within the development lifecycle. And that's the reason why we say a BA acts as a liaison between the customer or the end user and the technical side. Any questions on SDLC of for a role of a business analyst in SDLC?
Yeah, Vineet, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So, in the testing part, so
Mhm.
ideally, how much involvement should be there of a BA into the QA? Because somewhere I've seen that BA just do the smoke test, and in some
Yes,
organizations they just review and also approve the test plans and test case.
yes. So,
So it depends company to company, or is there any
yes. So
standard?
basically, that's a good point. So a BA could review test strategy and a test plan. And if you look at what test strategy and test plan is, basically how you're going to go about testing your application or requirements. In this case, BA would be one of the reviewers. If you do any documentation on the first page, you mention people who will review the document, this document is being shared only for information purposes. So BA could be one of the reviewers of the test strategy or test plan. Simple reason being, since BA was very close to the requirements, would know what is the best way to go about testing those requirements. And this is a suggestive route. It's not entirely true, because in certain projects, see, and plus, for the whole program, try to understand that no two projects are same. You'll find highly complex project to simple projects, and things will change drastically. Uh, you're right in one aspect that a BA could review test strategy, but I have seen highly complex projects where BA could not review a test strategy, because as simple as the simple reason being, it was highly technical testing required from the automation perspective, that the BA could just say that are the requirements being covered, and if the answer is yes from the testing team, BA questions are answered, right? So BA cannot provide more input than that. But yes, at times, and most of the times, BAs are either help used in reviewing the document or signing off the test plans and strategies. They might be used at times to review test scenarios as well, or test cases as well, but that is based on organization to organization. But when we talk about actual execution, that is when you execute a test case, when you actually perform an execution of a test script, that is something which is said that IA or IAB says that should not be done by a business analyst. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, Vineet. Yeah.
Again, and it's for everybody. A lot will depend upon the kind of organization you join. So, I will try and cover and I try and explain which most of the organizations will do. Uh, but more than that, I think from a role perspective, my personal suggestion to everybody has been to understand the fundamentals and the basis of BA. At times, you might not perform certain activities, and at times, you might perform certain activities which are outside BA scope. But nevertheless, if your role has 70 to 80% of core BA, I think that's a good role in any organization. So, any other questions? Okay. Um, so basically, that was the overview of business analyst and the role of a BA in different phases of SDLC. That's pretty much what we wanted to cover today as a